Let's record this. Let's do it. Last one of the year. Why not?
3 ball from CG43. They're in front.
This is flat out ridiculous.
From a beautiful left hand, in and out finish, the old-fashioned way.
Newell gets to the basket with one to come. From there again. You have got to be kidding me. Tyson step, wraps it up.
Hi everyone, welcome back. NBL Pocket Podcast. Well, that is the season. It's over. I'm recording this Monday, 6th of April at about 6:30 p.m. So the game was played just yesterday. Yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that wraps up NBL 26. I think this is the 7th or 8th year of the podcast. Feels like the 20th, but that's not the point. I kid around. It's actually been a bit of fun. What are we doing on this podcast? We're going to be going through the podcast stats this season. We're going to be talking about Game 5, obviously, the season at large, but only briefly. And then, a little look forward towards NBL 27. Let's start with the topic of the day. So Kings are champions of the year. I think it was pretty predictable from the beginning. And I think it became very obvious after they made that move for Torrey Craig at mid-season. That communicated that they thought they had enough and they went for it. And if you think about it in that way, at the same time that Adelaide, at a similar time when Adelaide were tooling up with Jenkins, who, nice player, but, Sydney were going full throttle with Torrey Craig. I mean, the Kings' spend must have been pretty big. They had the Pepe go down, Qual. Now, they'll probably get that back from insurance, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how it all works, but they were willing to spend on some pretty high-level talent. Davis, Delhi, a whole bunch of them. So I don't think it was a lock for them this season, but the way they ended the year, I thought you'd have to be quite foolish to think that Adelaide were a strong contributor. A strong chance. I thought they were a chance, but no, the bookies had this right from the very beginning. I will say just quickly while I've had that little precursory chat, I'm recording this in my garage, trying out a new recording setup for a bunch of things. So if it sounds a bit echoey, if it sounds a bit weird, and if you hear cars going by and a particularly noisy frog, he's just over to my right, well, at least you know why. But that's that. That's a bit of an overview. Let's look at Game 5 in particular. I was very vocal on Twitter. It's like peas and carrots. Twitter and talking about and watching live sport. I just absolutely love it. Tweet way too much, but I do enjoy it. That's at NBL Pocket Pod. Follow me there if you wish. I will say, at the end of this season, I will not be deleting Twitter, but I will, like with every year, I get to the end of the NBL season and after I've released this episode and it's gone live and I've mentioned it on Twitter, I don't delete Twitter, but I just get rid of it off my phone, and then when the season starts back up. So you won't see a lot of traction on there or anywhere else for that matter, but that's just, or my Instagram. I think that NBL Pocket Pod has an Instagram, who knows. We'll be turning that off. And for people out there who use Twitter for sports and sports mostly or exclusively, I'd suggest doing the same. Anyway, Game 5. First dot point I've got here is I was shocked to see Dellavedova not on Cotton every minute he was on the floor. We've seen that in the past where it's just a like-for-like substitution, particularly in the NBA. But the Kings let Cotton get hot early and really quite hot. And I was really shocked by that. I just thought Dellavedova was going to mimic him the whole game. And yes, Dellavedova had fouls late, but he didn't have fouls early. And they were still looking at that Craig option, which is a strong one, but I really thought Dellavedova was going to be there and they were going to bring Craig off Jenkins or so forth. But so that was interesting. Next top point I've got here is there was talk earlier in the week of Dellavedova versus Cotton, who's the better player / career. And for what it's worth, if I can just weigh in, Cotton's clearly the better player. He's got way better skills across the board, but Dellavedova's obviously had the better career because a career in the NBA is not necessarily about talent. It's about fit, it's about roster, it's about money, it's about greed, all that sort of BS. So I just wanted to weigh in there. But going back to Game 5, I thought Dellavedova rose to such an occasion. And I've been critical of Dellavedova, but, went sort of 3 of 5 from the outside, defended Cotton, got a few fouls. One was a bit bad, but as in not bad, as in one was a bad call. But just rose to such a level. But then again, so did Cotton. Cotton was just incredible, 35 and 9 under incredible pressure from minute 1 to minute whatever. I meant to put this into my notes and I've forgotten, but I wanted to see how much Cotton played of this series and the discrepancy in his minutes to anyone else on his own team or Sydney. Cotton just seemed to play every minute and would have played a lot in game one, even when it was a blowout. But if you took out the outliers, he just played every second. And the guy's incredible. Started to show some fatigue in the overtime, but that was predictable. And you could see it coming. 2 major takeaways from the game. These are the big ones. These are the 2 things where I thought the game was won and lost. And they are statistical, and I'll read them for you now. Jenkins plus Cameron plus Vasiljevic, 5 of 26 from the 3-point line. That's not a good percentage. Do the maths in your head. It's below 25%. Whereas Galloway, Dellavedova, and Craig, and equal, like their sort of counterparts. I'm not being cheeky by picking out like 3 who did particularly well. They were sort of if you married up their minutes, they're pretty similar 3v3. They went 6 of 14 from the 3-point line. And, it's only 3 more points, but it's also 12 less shots to get there. And, Adelaide could have stolen this. It was right there. And Vasiljevic in particular just shot 1 of 11, I think. It just didn't happen for him. And Jenkins missed a couple that he probably should have made, but hit a couple of hoops that were really important in the third, but then went kind of lacking in the fourth. And then Cameron fouled out, but it wasn't his day either. Like those 3 guys, you kind of needed one of them to do something, and all 3 of them kind of didn't. And that's where the game was lost. Whereas you had Delhi hitting 3-pointers at a high clip. Craig didn't do much, but Galloway I thought was important. So, and that was it. Kings had 2 of the 3 better players, and that was the game. Second big major takeaway for me is all season long, myself and fans on Twitter and a lot of people massively criticised Wells for those small lineups. Those funky Cotton, Isaac White, Vasiljevic, Jenkins, Cheatham, or Cheatham and Rakocevic instead of Cheatham. People criticised it often and pulled him apart for it. And Wells had a major decision to make in Game 5. White hadn't played a minute and Kenyon hadn't played a minute. Rakocevic was fouled out, and they had to look at, okay, Rakocevic fouled out. They were always going to keep Cheatham on the floor, and they had a choice. Are we going with Humphreys, or they didn't have any option. He didn't have that option to go really small like he has in the past, which, to be fair, has been eaten up in the past as well. But once Humphreys hit the floor in overtime, it was like cha-ching. Davis just went crazy. He was coming off pick and roll. He saw Humphreys in front of him. He saw those iron boots, those concrete puppies, and he just scored every time. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And all year we've criticised Wells for making that move, going small. And it's interesting that he had a choice to make. And he went with what is the defensible option. I don't know if it's the better option or worse option, but he went with the most defensible, all right, those 2 haven't been in the game. Humphreys is warm. He's here. He's one of our starters. He's our 20-minute player. I got to put him in. And they got smoked. If he had gone with a Kenyon or a White out of nowhere, that would have been, and it hadn't worked, he would have lost his head. That would have been indefensible. People would have ripped him apart. So he had to. I think Humphreys had a couple of turnovers too, where the moment was too big. He was dropping the ball. It was just not. Had a couple of turnovers and things. It just wasn't it in the blowout. And listen, this game, no one person cost this team the game or the series. I'm not saying that. It was a high-level contest with the exception of Game 1. But there are some breaks of the game, and that's it. To me, they were the breaks of the game, and that's it. I want to do a best on for Sydney in order. I thought Davis was incredible. I thought Cooks was fantastic. And the next one I thought was Dellavedova. I know people are going to say Suarez, and he came up with some big plays. And, if you want to put him ahead of Dellavedova, I can see that. But there was just moments in the game where I thought Dellavedova was really impressive. And I've been a critic of his, so it was meant even more. Best on for Adelaide, and this was obviously Cotton. And then I've got like 5 dashes. Like the second best was hard to pick. And I've got Rakocevic and then Jenkins. Jenkins hit a couple of nice little plays. Rakocevic hit a couple of plays. People are going to say, it's Cheatham. And he had decent stats and everything, and he did have a good game. And I'm probably being a bit harsh not putting him in there, but he did some good things. But his lack of decision-making and offensive operation skills came sharply into focus late in the game. And they just weren't a help for the 36ers. So I saw that. And for that reason, I've put the brake on, taking my foot off the gas as far as Cheatham is concerned. But, total congratulations to Sydney. They were the better team and they won it. I didn't think this was going to go to 5, but it did. And you're looking at the margin, the winning margins across this series. Game 1 was 40. Then it was a 2-point win to Adelaide. Then it was a healthy sort of 15-point win to Sydney, 2-point game in Game 4. And then this game was a blowout in Sydney. So, whatever happened in Adelaide happened in Adelaide. We don't need to... You want to talk about Adelaide? Talk to Adelaide about Adelaide. General thoughts. The Kelly versus Bogut thing I thought was just remarkably lame. I got to hand it to Bogut, just keeping the headphones on. Any sports men and women listening, the way I look at it was, and people defended Bogut, people obviously kissed his ass. I mean, no sect of sportsmen gets their ass kissed harder than the Australian basketball players. They just get kissed so hard. And people were like, oh, Bogut, this is hilarious. It wasn't hilarious. It wasn't that clever, but it was a nice little strategy. Any sports person listening out there, or even anyone listening, just keep the headphones on, maybe some shades down, and walk past the reporters. Don't. Bogut gave some story, so he did put money in their pocket. He should have just kept walking, but that's the solution. And really the way I looked at it is, these reporters are trying to get you to be an actor for free. They want you to say something mean or bad that they clip up. They haven't paid you for it. It's probably going to make you look bad, likely going to make you bad. Just don't give any ammunition and just move on. It's like when Josh Giddey had that pedophile case and he was gone. He just was dead quiet, and then that kid in the crowd a couple of months ago kind of spat something at him, and he spat something back, and that kid forced Giddey to be an actor and got him good. And as a result, all that messiness just came to the fore. So that was Bogut. But we had the Bogut versus Kelly stuff, which I thought was incredibly lame. And sorry for the language here, but we had a fat fucking cunt versus a cunt with a big fat fucking mouth. So it's like, do the two kind of cross each other out? Hard to say. Take your pick. I pick not caring the slightest bit. Moving on to after Game 5, the trophy broke. It's pretty funny. Nice social clip. Got a bit of traction around the world. Whatever. I saw that trophy breaking and I thought, you know what? I actually thought it was good to see the players in a big line behind Xavier Cooks rather than a big fat line in front of him. I thought that was a change up from last season, which was good. If you don't know, that's a gag. Game 1 was obviously a massive blowout, and I don't know how this impacts on the TV ratings, but we always come back to the TV ratings. Now, these NBL games are on 10 Drama, not a posh channel, and weren't advertised heavily. 10 are a hopeless broadcast partner. But anyway, Game 1 didn't feature in the top 30 in the TV ratings. The free-to-air games are on 10 Drama or some shit like that. It's just so pathetic. The commitment from the flagging 10 is despicable. It's not good enough. It's lame. It's a lame channel. It doesn't do good in-house advertising. Throw it in the bin. The Women's Asia Cup Soccer was on the same night and got 2.5 million viewers on 10 on the main channel. So obviously the NBL was probably never going to eclipse that, as in get the prime spot and move the soccer to 10 Drama, the secondary channel. That's not going to happen. But there needs to be a balance of the attention that should be afforded to the NBL. Right now there's just not from 10. Sport is propping up free-to-air across the nation, and yet the NBL just can't seem to get any part of the action. It's cheap TV to produce. It's a good enough product. There's 18,500 people at Kudos Bank Arena, albeit a lot of the tickets are only $25, which is incredibly generous from Sydney ownership. But jeepers creepers, the NBL needs a friend inside of 7, 9, or channels ABC or SBS. And then an extension off of this is, can something be done with local markets? And what I mean by that is, okay, let's say Adelaide versus Sydney, nobody gives a damn in Brisbane, Melbourne, or Perth, right? No one gives a stuff. And that's grand. But can you do something where 10 in Sydney shows the Kings games, or 10 in Adelaide and it gets the main channel? I've never worked out why Channel 10 is so national, or all the free-to-air networks are so national in their approach to their stations. I know what I presume that they're all incredibly inept and stupid, which is most people in Australian media, and they don't make any money. But I've never understood why they couldn't be more flexible like that. And maybe there's a contractual thing with the NBL, its teams, or it's just in the too hard basket. But I just look and go, the NBL, if it had local market TV free-to-air support, could actually give you something. And even if you tailored the ads on the Wildcats, for example, or the Kings to be more localized, I just think that would have a value. But again, and I'm not trying to be an asshole here, the guy I'd love to speak to about this is Mark Arena in Perth, and I might actually try and hit him up. And if he's listening, I think I've slagged off that team a lot in the past. It's probably not going to be the best conversation, but I'd love to have a chat to him and all the owners about it, to be fair, and see where their head is at. But yeah, that's moving on from that. But the other thing I'd say is there's that, I want to say maybe a Code Sport article or Financial Review, can't remember, where Mark Arena's got his palms up saying, hey, there was this sale of the Jack Jumpers for a decent amount of money and we haven't seen any of the money. Yeah, this is the NBL, as much as we've had the championship and it's all glossy and fantastic at the minute, it's a great product, it's still got these massive chasms of understanding and commerciality that are fun to pick apart. Guys, enough looking back. Actually, no, not enough looking back. Let's look at the podcast stats from NBL Pocket Pod. I know you're out there thinking, gee, I want to talk about the games, but tell us about your podcast stats for this season. And you know what? You have asked and I will answer. So this season of the NBL Pocket Pod was the 280th between the 290th episodes. We did 10 for the season. Canyon was here for most of them. That's 10 between August 2025 and April 2026 today. Now, these numbers are not inclusive of this episode, which I haven't downloaded yet. To give you all the stats and be totally upfront, like no other NBL product is, that gets like 350 views and is shot in a massive studio, and you're like, how the fuck do you keep the lights on? So this season, there were 7,859 listens between that period of August 2025 and April 2026. So that's 34 listens per day over 231 days. That's how long the season went. Can that be fucking right? Jesus Christ. And that's up 344% on last season. I believe we put out very few episodes last season. So, and there's been 152,000 downloads all time for NBL Pocket Pod. That's over 280 episodes. So you can divide one into the other and work out what that is per ep. It's meager numbers overall. If you're not getting 10,000 downloads per episode, a podcast is not commercially viable. But you look at that, if we got 7,859 listens this season over 10 episodes, fuck, what's that an episode? A couple hundred or whatever. Not bad. 785 per episode? Can that be right? That can't be right. Anyway, doesn't feel like that. But I guess people, because every episode gets about 500, 550, depending on, more important than a topical conversation is actually point of upload. If I upload it Monday, it's got more days to be relevant before the next one, or that sort of shit. But that's kind of, for people out there who are thinking about starting a pod on maybe the NBL or, gardening or puppetry, I don't fucking care. That's just a reality of, how long and how fruitless, not to be rude to myself, but that's how tough, podcasts can be, and how little the NBL is, and trickling down through, the ecosphere of podcasting. But don't let that dissuade you if you're thinking about making a pod. Who knows? Maybe you'll hit and make $1 million. We'll see. All right. We've looked back. Let's look forward. The other day, and before we look forward, I want to tell this story. The other day I was speaking with a big sports fan, and they said something really incredible. Because in the past, when seasons have ended, I've sort of been like, that was that. And, if you're not a player or a coach or close to the team or a big fan, it's like, oh, okay, one season goes, next one comes up, And so, my investment and care is wind, and, it had some highs and some lows over years and over seasons and so on and so forth. And I said, it's kind of boring how things just keep kind of, rolling on. And this person said, no, that's exactly it. The best thing about sports is not whether you win after 48 or 40 minutes. It's not whether you win the season or the championship or the playoffs afterwards. It's the fact that you get to do it all over again. So if you win a game, lose a game, you got another game coming up. If season ends, you got the championship. Lose the championship, all right, you got the next games and the season and the championship. And that's pretty cool. And I've just really realized that, after every game is another game. After every season is another season. That's the beauty of it, and I finally get it. And it's in that spirit that just 2 days after the season ends, we look at these two teams heading into next season very quickly, but nonetheless, more so at Adelaide than the Kings. But let's do the Kings first, get them out of the way. They won, don't need to change much because they've got a lot of injuries and guys coming back. Contracted, they've got Gorgon. Dellavedova's contracted not through next year, but the year after as well. Cooks, Galloway, and Robertson, who got hurt, and he's on a mutual, which they'll probably pick up. It was sad to see him not play. He could actually help them in the finals. Uncontracted, some big names. Torrey Craig, it depends on where his career is at. Is he going NBA or is he committing back to this league? Suarez, Davis is obviously a must sign. Quite Noi is on a team option. Lupepe, who got hurt and was out all year, he's on a team option. Bull Quoll is on a team option, and they paid big for him. And then you got Sean Bruce, who didn't play in this finals, I don't think at all. Maybe in game one in the blowout, he may be tinkering around retirement. Yeah. And then Malawatch is out of contract. So you look at them and you look, the must signs are Davis, I think Lupepe, and Malawatch. And then you'd be having a conversation with yourself about, I think if you wanted to bring back, if Craig wanted to return and do all season, for sure, he's a must. Suarez, you'd probably kick the tyres on if Lupepe's coming back and you feel like he's capable of taking that spot. Quite Noi is on a team, depends what they paid him and what that money is. But the big question they've got to ask themselves is about Bull Quoll. Didn't have a great year, got better as the year went on, got hurt, loves a foul. Malawatch was kind of, knocking on the door of those minutes. You start to have a conversation there because I think Quoll, a lot of teams are going to talk themselves into, there's very few locals on the board. He may become expensive if he can have that conversation within his team option. I'm not quite sure how it works. And then Noi obviously didn't start well in Game 5, wasn't on, and Gorgon just pulled the pin on him quick. But he does help you through the season, and I quite like his. He can get hot, and he can also be cold. Yeah, but that's that. But Kings have obviously got in a pretty good position when you've already got your coach wrapped up, Dellavedova, Cooks, and Davis looks pretty happy in the situation he's in. If you can get those guys, you can kind of move the other pieces around. 36ers. Now this is fascinating. Here's who they've got under contract. Mike Wells returns. Bryce Cotton they've got under contract, so they're going to the semi-finals. Flynn Cameron's coming back. White is coming back. Harris, I mentioned, who got no minutes, but I like as a player, is on a mutual option. I always thought, they were looking for a bit of a wing help. They went and got Jenkins, who was pretty grounded but quite veteran-y. I always thought Harris was going to feature in their plans, and he was starting to get minutes at the Wildcats. And then this year didn't play jack. And I always thought he could probably give you something, but Mike Wells, in all his infinite wisdom, doesn't think that. Vasiljevic is under contract, and Humphreys is under contract. Uncontracted, Rakocevic, who they've talked about bringing back, Cheatham, who they've talked about bringing back, and Matt Kenyon, who is out there. So you look at who they've got contracted. Obviously, Will Wells coach next season, despite being contracted. Adelaide love to sack a coach. This year was tumultuous. Yes, they got a good result at the end of it, going to 5 games in the finals. Can only do 1 game better than that. But did it ever feel legit along the way? Did it ever feel easy along the way? And if it didn't, maybe it's not meant to. But, if you think Cotton's not knocking on Grant Kelly's door going, hey, sack the coach and bring in... cars pulled up outside the garage. Imagine if this is some debt collector and on the pod you just hear me getting beaten to death. That would be amazing. I'm sorry, I got to start whispering now. Wells. Is Cotton not banging on the door of Grant Kelly's office saying, hey, if Gleason's available, get him, or I'm going to find a way to sign some 10-day deal in the NBA and exercise my presumably NBA and or Euro out clause. He could do that, and that could happen. And, and maybe then they don't have to spend on others. But the issue I have here is, and I ragged on him at the start of the program, I just don't think Humphreys is good. And he occupies a spot that's expensive, and he's contracted, and it's kind of like, well, you've paid him, what do you do? Do you recruit over the top of him again, like they did with Rakocevic? But they kind of need that spend on the wing, because Jenkins who's obviously on contract. I haven't got it written down here, but I don't think anyone sees him returning. They need that spend on the wing because they've only really got Cameron and Vasiljevic, who's a good player but grounded, not that lengthy wing. They just look so small in comparison to the Kings, who are so widthy. What do you do there? Do you let Cheatham or Kosovic walk, plug it up with Humphreys and kind of hope? I mean, to me, I'll be bold. I'll make the natural move. I think if you've paid Humphreys, you got to play him. I'd bring out Rakosovic and I'd get you something more on the wing. Use that spend on someone who can hit something from the outside and is a bit more veteran-y and a bit more reliable, because Cameron's a bit younger and still coming through it. Vasiljevic is a little bit hot-cold. You hear that engine? Things are getting hot in here. That's what I'd do if I was Adelaide, as well as I would really look at, if Wells is not your coach, don't linger. If all those rumours, which were well substantiated, that players weren't happy, just cut bait with him and pay him out and reduce your spend, but spend wisely in concentrated areas. And Grant Kelly and the money funneling from other places have been pretty willing to do that in Adelaide, so that's what I do. Guys, ladies, gentlemen, girls, boys, friends, comrades, maybe even some enemies and hate listeners, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a really good year, and thank you very much for listening. I really mean that. Next season, we'll keep doing the pod. Hopefully Andrew may come through. I want to get more guests. There was a time when I used to actually guest chase, get people on. I might do more of that. But, I really enjoy doing the stuff where someone writes a book and I have a chat about it, and it's kind of about basketball. That was good. Might launch off into a whole new podcast doing that, but we'll see. Thanks very much for listening. Next year, I'm dumping Twitter, but I'll be back. May as well keep the feed open. It's got enough views in it that it's juice is worth the squeeze. It was a good year. I really think, I'm pretty even-handed about the NBL. I'm not a super fan. I'm not a cuck for the league. If something's good, I say it's good. If something's bad, it's bad. And to get that number in Sydney was a huge number. And even the game before it was a big number. The crowds in Adelaide were terrific. Perth hung around despite their team being kind of hollow. Melbourne loves a winner, but they kind of hung with their team that was really, really faltered. But we had a good year where, Melbourne was strong and faded out, and Sydney weren't strong and came on, and the Wildcats kind of bobbed along. And Adelaide, we had a Cotton revenge year. He was so vengeful. Think about how many great fucking games he played this year and how many were fun to watch. And, game 2 where he hits the layup to save their series. I mean, it was fucking entertaining. Sorry for the language. Game 5 was fucking entertaining. It went to overtime in a game 5, in a deciding game. You can't get much more exciting than that. Overtime was a fizzer, but the guys were tired. Players were tired. But, great year. Brisbane suck. But even though Brisbane stink, they have at least made a pretty big swing to get better. And you've got to appreciate that. I think Weaver they've just gone, shit, we've had so many coaches in and out through the door, you're the guy. And at least the players know they can't fuck around. This year they knew they could fuck around, and they did mess around. Jalen Adams came in having a laugh. His feet would have been on the sand of, the beaches up there more so than the hardwood. Bless him, he got his money, whatever. Brisbane and Cairns, maybe they can be something more. Tasmania, if they can get healthy, they're a team. It's a good league. And if you're new to it and you saw the trophy broke and you typed into Apple Podcasts, lousy search engine, NBL, and you came across this thing, thanks for listening and enjoy next season. Enjoy the off season, and I will see you soon enough. Bye.